Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Security Table. I am joined by my friends Matt Coles and Izar Tarandosh, and I am proud to announce that we have given Izar a new title here on the Security Table. He's now officially Minister of AI, and whatever the other thing was, I don't remember what
it was. It was. Wait. I have it here. It was Minister for AI and Intellectual Property. The Viscount Camrose. I want the Viscount part.
Yeah. Okay, we can add that too. Because listen, in the Security Table, we can do whatever we want. That's the beauty of sitting around the table here. We can make whatever decisions we want. So Matt, we'll work on your title. I don't have a good one for you yet.
Magnanimous Threat Modeler for Life.
that sounds like a good tattoo. I don't know about a title, but I could see Matt tattooing that across his chest. In that certain font.
Certain font.
Threat
with
modeler
invisible ink, with ultraviolet ink, so it only shows up at certain times.
Only when you pass through security at the airport.
We should do the Knuckles thing. Threat modeling. Life didn't choose me.
actually, wait. You could do on. I can't with my hand here. Threat. So we need 6 fingers, right? We need
Model.
6 fingers. So.
THREAT. Well, you put 2 letters across one knuckle.
Wait, how many do you have?
I am not the 6-figure man.
We just did a quick inventory. Well,
we got our
folks.
Princess
We
Bride
are actually here.
Today, so we're good.
There you go. We are actually here to talk about something serious other than threat modeling, tattoos, titles, and other types of fun stuff. So. We've been tracking, and Izar brought to our attention the government of the United Kingdom has some minimum security standards that they're kicking around. Countdown begins for new minimum security standards regime for all consumer products with internet connectivity. So while we do love to be part of a good regime, first of all, if we get that opportunity, I thought we would unpack a few of the examples that they gave here. We're not going to dive into this entire document, but let's unpack a few of the different things that they're referencing. And I did have a chance to scan through the act itself, and they did have a pretty broad definition of consumer products to include mobile phones and other things. So this isn't just IoT that they're prescribing these types of security requirements for. But let's jump in with the first one and just kind of go through this list and maybe pick it apart a little bit and see what are our thoughts on this. And so the first one says the banning of universal default and easily guessable default passwords on consumer connectable products. So this one feels like we've been saying this for 2 decades at this point.
We've been shouting, we've been crying.
We've almost gone through the 5 stages of grief in this particular to try to get people to respond to it. There was denial, there was, all of these things. But yeah, it seems like this is one of those ones that I feel like we've been saying for a long time.
Yeah, go ahead, Izar. You first.
No, you go.
The Viscount first, please.
So, noblesse oblige. So the things that it's funny that right when we are starting to hear people going about abandoning passwords, then we finally get somebody to shout, "Hey guys, stop with the default!" Right?
This isn't the first time. This isn't the first time we've seen regulations or guidelines certainly and or regulations to have
guidelines. Yeah, sure.
To have default passwords removed.
But these are actual. I don't remember seeing actual regulations.
No. This is the for the UK. This is not new. I believe that they've had with IoT security last year. They had regulations around this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so
what do I know?
What's just for maybe we might have some people listening that haven't been living this battle for the last 20 years of their lives with default passwords. So let's just lay a foundation, Matt. Like what's the challenge with a default or easily guessable default password?
Seriously, if a credential is well known and somebody has access to a system, so first off, often default passwords are well documented, and by well documented, I mean they exist in the product documentation, which makes its way often to public-facing websites that anybody can look up. And so, having access to a system, and many systems today are at least within the home network, if not internet facing, either by design or by accident. And so that gives an attacker a direct access to what is most likely a highly privileged account. I mean, in a nutshell, that's why we don't like default passwords, and so it is hard. It is important. It is easy. It is usually easier to fix a default password than it is to fix the secure connected deployment aspect.
Yeah, and I was working at Cisco in the days of Cisco 123, which was still the default credential, and it's like
it would have been stronger to use password 123 at this point, right? With the
but I mean, everybody across the internet knew Cisco 123 was the default. When I take the metal box out of the cardboard box, I apply power, it brings up a login. If it had a login or whatever configured, it was always Cisco 123 is the way in. So that the challenge being that everybody knew kind of what that was. And so it sounds like we're violently in agreement here that this is a good practice. It's almost like we wish it would have been implemented.
And remember, you had root, right? Root, and then Tor, because people try to be fancy, right? To get rid of default passwords by obscuring it. And we know security by obscurity doesn't work.
Although, I have to pop the balloon there somewhere. So I wonder if they're saying, what's the minimum that should go in place instead of this? Like, are we going to start looking at government-given password policies? Not that those work at all, or are we going to start seeing vendors become more creative in the schemes that they use for that kind of thing?
Well, are you suggesting?
Many times you get the default password like either as a setup thing, and you are forced to change it, right? And that's good. That's great. We've always been saying that is the way. But sometimes the vendors say, hey, we need that default password because otherwise how can we service the device?
Yeah.
Right? We want to reach out and touch someone. We have to know how to get into the house.
Do companies even do that anymore, though? As a strategy, do they do remote? Like, I would have thought that would have been a thing of the past of doing remote troubleshooting and support.
Your optimism is endearing.
No, I think that's a regular.
I'm an eternal optimist.
I think that's still a regular practice by companies, especially with I think a lot of companies shifting towards managed services over years. So I don't think this is unique or special in any way, shape, or form. Maybe it's no longer that companies don't feel like it's necessary for the consumer to have access. But I think there's a value add play there for a number of organizations.
But things like SCADA and industrial controllers and stuff like that, I understand that that's still very much a practice.
But I think the expectation there is the deployment scenario is such that it's limited and restricted access, and therefore having a default credential is less severe. And so, but we also know from history and experience that their threat model is maybe not as fully fleshed out as it should be. So,
or it doesn't go forward.
Well, that's what I mean, right? It doesn't evolve with the threats that actually exist as the system gets deployed and is maintained. Now, it's interesting. I did quickly look at the actual regulation here. So, its passwords must be unique per product or defined by the user of the product. And so the argument that an organization company might make is, well, if we don't have access to the password, how are we going to be able to provide support services? The flip side of that, of course, is if you set it uniquely, you'll just have to. I want to be careful. The wording is a little vague. It says unique per product. Is that per product as built or per product deployed? So that's one interesting question. Yeah. But if you allow the user to set a credential, in other words, interestingly enough, setup time, it pops up a dialog that says, do you want to set a password? Otherwise, you don't get in, or does it start with no authentication, which would potentially be even worse? Because some users may skip that step if they're allowed to. But a company that's providing a support service would then have to gain access to that credential. They would need to have a partnership with the consumer in order to in order to provide the service that's expected.
Yeah, you're kind of describing a single credential
Yep,
world.
I am.
In this particular, in this day and age, imagining a product that only had a single credential that I had to share with somebody else would be a product that would.
Well, I'm talking about specifically an administrative or configuration, support credential, right? User credentials should be user specified. Maintenance and dare I say backdoors, but I don't want to use that term here, because in theory these are all documented credentials, or at least well-known interfaces that have credentials. Those things, I think, are what is really in focus for this effort, right? So if we talk about an embedded system or a device that's supposed to be relatively hands-off for an actual user, you may have a maintenance account or a support account or a configuration account that would require a credential. And I think that's where this becomes the challenge, right? Because you want to be able to maintain or manage a fleet of devices. Do you want to have to manage a fleet of credentials for those devices too?
I do.
I know you do, and I do. But an organization providing services, Geek Squad, want to have to do that.
I wouldn't like Geek Squad near my network. But.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The people that would probably either not care or not know about this sides of the things. But Matt, a question that just came up to me while you were talking. You probably know about this. Do we have any precedent on consumer products? Like, let's say I bought a router and I'm setting it up. I enter my user password, but for anything that requires privileged access, I have to actually go and flip a hardware switch.
I don't think I've seen that on a device in recent memory. I know that there are. So I know some IoT devices, and IoT devices means smart devices for home use, not routers per se, but some of the others, that service access is actually physically protected, meaning you have to either gain access to a port that might be not easily accessible, or you may require a special cable because it has a certain pin out that doesn't allow traditional access. But I don't think I don't recall seeing something where you have to have a physical switch in order to put it into service mode in that way.
How cool would it be if the same way that we have keys to our homes, we would have like a YubiKey or something like that, and whenever you have to change something that's privileged inside your home devices, you would have to put that.
I can tell you that depending on the nature of the device and the I guess the nature of the device and its cost, and I mean cost to manufacture and maintain, many of the chips that are used don't have the crypto support to be able to do something like that.
But in this case, it wouldn't even be crypto. You could just like register one of those. They have unique serial numbers. And just the fact that you physically put it in there means, hey, it's me, I'm inside the house, and now I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, there needs to be a whole suite of connected products for people like us with high assurance needs and requirements. But I don't think the average consumer wants to pay double whatever the smart thermostat costs to have the ability to protect that device in update, for when an update's being applied, or they don't want the inconvenience of
but wait,
having
aren't people already used to the touch your phone to pay for gas and groceries,
which requires NFC?
Why couldn't we have? Yeah, why couldn't we have that in consumer?
So how do you secure that? So NFC is not without risk. Bluetooth is not without risk, right? It's a proximity. It certainly is a proximity thing. And I guess that's the argument, right? Is that if you have the ability to do an NFC, you're physically next to the device.
Or don't even have NFC. Go back to the YubiKey as registered. But yeah, it's a very easy 2FA that I think that people in this time and age would already be willing to accept as like,
and that comes
your digital home.
Also,
I was going to say the value of the asset, right? Like the average consumer out there is not as concerned. They may be willing to, to make strides or whatever they're just not as concerned. Like when you think about proximity, if you did something that was proximity based, somebody who used to be a high level government official and has a higher risk profile than somebody who's, just never been famous, let's just say. I think there is you don't have to worry as much about somebody trying to get into
somebody with less of a risk appetite.
Yeah. Somebody's going to try to get to use Bluetooth to attack somebody there's just a risk profile there. Some people would be higher level targets where somebody might want to try to attack Bluetooth to disrupt something in their house.
So now it's important to note, I think, for the purpose of this, of the thing that we're talking about, the regulation that we're talking about, they have specifically taken out of the conversation non-password based systems. So if you're using Bluetooth, or NFC as a means of access control for authentication or to MFA, that portion is out of scope. So specifically out of scope do not include our cryptographic keys. So anytime you're using NFC, you're going to be or some device, something you have or something you own that's in close proximity, there's going to be a key exchange that occurs. That's not a password. So that's out of scope.
Okay.
Anyway.
Let's talk about the next one. Yeah, we only got 3 more to go.
What's our track record here?
The second one. Yeah, we're running at about 15 minutes per, but we're going to do this quickly.
The second one is easy.
Is it?
Yeah. Increase manufacturer transparency on how long products will receive security updates.
Yep.
Helping the consumer make better purchasing decisions is the goal here. So basically, I guess what it's saying is I have to, if I'm building a product, I have to, on the label or on the box, I have to say, we'll receive product updates until January 2027.
Assuming we are still in business.
Asterisk. Put an asterisk after it.
Yeah. So looking at the regulation, it is a little bit easier to understand on this one. It applies to hardware and software, or the combination. So that's actually really critically important. And it requires a contact person. So it requires a point of contact. So many companies already maintain security at companyname.com, or they have a PCERT or CCERT team that's sort of a point of contact, or even a legal team. Some companies have legal as their point of contact, and or they have a support channel, something which is definitive that somebody can say, okay, I can report a security issue against or make requests, and then when somebody makes a request specifically, they need to get back at least acknowledgement that the issue was received and status updates on a regular basis. So that's the reporting part, and also a place to indicate how long security updates, like Chris was saying. We see this with things like Chromebooks or Android support, right? There's a definitive timeline of when the last security update will be applied, right? So some companies already do this, but this is a call to action for smaller OEMs and ISVs to really think about this long term. That product release is not your goal; it's product lifecycle, including to decommission and destruction.
Yeah. And I know where this is coming from. Like in the early days of IoT, there were products that were rushed to market that didn't even have an update function. Mm-hmm. So it was like, oh, if it's not working as you expected, you're going to need to throw it away and buy another one. And so I get that's where some of this is coming from. I think if we look at the next one was a little more puzzling to me, and maybe you guys can help me factor what's
actually
going on.
Before we move on to that next one, so an interesting comment on this regulation. So in specifically the section around security updates. So again, somebody can make a request for how long things should be in support for. It has to be provided without any prior request, without cost, and without requesting personal information, in a way that is understandable to a non-technical reader in English, specifically. So that's
just got a lot harder.
Well, the non-technical audience part.
Well, no, I mean, I can't charge for it though. So you're basically telling me that I have to pick a date, an arbitrary date in the future that I'll update this thing through. And I have to build that into my cost model. Mm-hmm. So I'm reaching kind of almost a soapbox moment here, because I'm realizing what's happening here though is that this is going to add. So these products are going to have to double in cost to make something like this work, because like when I buy a new computer, I can buy an extended warranty to support it for an extended period of time. Sounds like what this is telling me is I can't do that anymore. I still have to have a security level of updates that's included, and that I can't charge for until I reach the end of life that I've put on the label on the box. Am I interpreting this right, or am I missing the mark?
So I'm not sure about on the box. It does say about publishing it on a website or making it available on request. What's interesting, though, what's also interesting here, so this may go to your soapbox moment, is as a manufacturer, if you choose and publish a date, you cannot ever make it shorter than that. You may extend it, but you can't make it shorter than that. So if you decide, we need to end of life this thing earlier than necessary, planned obsolescence, for instance, before that target date, that's a no-no. And so you really do have to plan your support resources and everything, because again, you're going to have to commit to security updates, and security updates for technologies where you may choose technologies that are reaching end of life when you choose them, and they go end of life after before your support date ends, or other factors. If you have a website and you're using a Node, for instance, and one of those Node projects just disappears, you have to plan for that, and you have to be able to account and manage that. And maybe you're doing patches on your own for security issues. So that does potentially have a cost to it, but that's a cost that should have been borne anyway by the engineering effort.
I'm confused.
What are you confused? We're all confused. But
it seemed to me that we were on the second bullet, the one that talks about how long products receive security updates for. And somehow we jumped to the fourth bullet, which is device manufacturers will be required to publish contact information to allow.
Sorry, I brought them together because they're mixed together in the same section.
Yeah. Then I went to look at the the law itself, and I am utterly confused, because this paragraph has to comply with that paragraph and the other paragraph. And my God, I was not born for this. But okay, at the end of the day, just to go back to Chris' point that this is going to make things costlier. Yep. Samsung does do that with their handsets. They say, hey, you're buying this Ultra whatever, and we are going to patch it for 4 years and no more. OnePlus does the same thing. We are going to give you patches for like the next 3 versions of major versions of Android. And that didn't change their cost. So I think that I lost you on the...
I'm thinking more about like maybe the lower end bottom feeders of the consumer product market, which maybe it'll be good if they're driven out of business, but when you think about, to Matt's point about OEM, right? Like if you go to Amazon and search for camera, security camera, internet connected security camera, you will find 472,000 companies that make internet security cameras. There are a few that are at bubble at the top of the market, like Ring and people like that, who have an established track record and likely a security team behind what they do. But then there's 400,000 of them that are just OEMing to a factory and creating it, and they're creating a least common denominator product they can sell for $17. So maybe it's them maybe they'll get pushed out of the market as a component of this.
But look how funny how things now change a bit. Let's go back to what Matt said, that some boards have pinouts that change the functionality and whatnot. I remember like 10, 12 years ago, because before we have all the cams at home thing ecosystem, I bought a small Chinese Amazon clone to do my puppy cam, right? Mm-hmm. And it came up with, oh my God, glaring to the point of the last episode. I run Dast on it, and did I get results?
You got actual results?
And
So it wasn't useless?
Yeah, I got the actual results, yeah. And long story short, turns out that they were OEMing a motherboard that was used by a different manufacturer that did have the clue in. So I was able to bring in that firmware, open it up, change the identifiers, turn the pin out into something that was willing to be burned, and put the new firmware in. And Echo, now I have a new camera from a new manufacturer, and I didn't pay the full price. So the point is, even if we get to a point where the tail end of the manufacturers would fall because that would become too costly for them, or because they don't even have a software capability at all, they just get this generic blob, change the strings, change the logo, and pass it forward and don't care. So either it's going to separate industries and create this firmware thing where they do all the regulations and whatnot and pass that cost to the guy who's OEMing the thing, or it's going to fall into the customer to, much like I did, figure out what is it that they paid less for, or make the conscious decision of saying, I don't know how to do this stuff, so I'm going to pay more.
Let's be honest. What percentage of the world can do what you just did?
So
right?
Those people are going to be the ones paying more and leaving behind those makers that are not willing to put up with the cost of security. So it's going to clean up the market.
Well, so we don't know. I don't think we know what the penalties are for non-compliance. Is that not allowed to be sold, or is that some massive amount of fines?
Let me ask the Vicom. But even if there aren't any penalties, right? Even if there aren't any, I think that the market forces that Chris are describing are going to force people out of the market. And I think that it's a net positive.
Consumer behavior drives us, I think, more so than I mean, the market for high security in the general population, a $10 camera versus a $50 camera, if you get the same functionality and the only difference is whether they have a security team behind them, I imagine people are still going to buy the $10 camera.
I am going to take some of Chris' optimism in here and sort of throw it out there that in this time and age where you open any newspaper and you have second page, the baby camera started to talk in a very eerie voice, and I don't know where it came from. People are waking up to the fact that these devices are, more powerful than we usually give them credit for. So I want to believe that our job is going to eventually be made easier because market forces are going to ask for more security. And I would even say, without knowing, that if the UK went forward and came out with this kind of bill that goes and puts prod security smack in the middle of the thing, it's because their public is already asking their politicians to do something about it. So it's a different kind of market force. Politicians don't wake up in the morning and create customer protecting bills just because they're nice. They got forced to it.
Yeah, that's true. When you think about the average politician, they're not security people like we are. They're not driven. They're not gonna try to increase the greater good of the technology landscape by pushing things forward. Somebody's in their ear telling or paying for this influence in some way. Now I'm not so optimistic anymore. What just happened? What happened?
I think it's Adam.
That's true. We did have a good conversation with Adam Shostak about some other things that's a good point. May have brought me down to that quick little thought process there. Well, how about the last one? So this one seems tough to be against because I think most people in the market are doing this now, but device manufacturers will be required to publish contact information to allow vulnerabilities. Matt mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I mean, I can't think of a major company that I use a product for them that doesn't do this now. Like, this seems like so 1990s of a requirement. Like in the 1990s, we didn't have this. There were still a lot of companies in those days that had security addresses. But I feel like in 2023, does anybody not have security at their company routing to somebody who can listen?
You know what's funny? I look at the other side of the thing. Having been at the receiving side of a number of bug bounty campaigns, for even the people who are doing the bug bounty, they themselves don't think about emailing security at wherever. So it may be that by crawling on people's ears, we got companies to have this even sort of standard security act, whatever. But the consumer side is not educated to that.
Right. And
so I think that this is one of those that goes like to both sides and clearing up that channel. And hey,
and I think that this is, so there's talk about cost here. It's one thing to have an email like support at company XYZ, right? So you have a vehicle. Now, I know from experience, from working in a couple of companies that do consumer products, that support channel, they may not be fully aware of how to handle a security issue. They may not have people on staff initially to handle that. So you have to have people who know how to handle security issues. Recognize that if something is a security issue, right? Because somebody may say, may report something in a way that is very technical, but isn't recognizable to the support person as, oh, this is a security problem, as opposed to a customer support problem. Mm-hmm. The law, the regulation is very particular here. And the important part is not actually having a point of contact. I think the important part is that there's a receipt of an acknowledgement that a report was made, and
status updates,
and that regular ongoing communications is made on the status of that issue, right? And that's, I think, where companies, especially companies that are not well funded, these run 400,000 on Amazon companies, right, may not have the facilities to do this on a regular basis. They can barely do it for support issues in some cases. If you call up and I say you have a bug, or I can't get the device online or something, but now you're going to have to do this for managing a security issue. The other challenge is, again, it needs to be without gathering personal information from the submitter and free of charge in English. So you have challenges of most companies, I think, that supply support don't do that for non-customers, meaning they want to know who's making the report. Is it one of our devices, or is it one you have a support contract for, or have you bought a subscription? Not random person submitting a vulnerability report and then having an ongoing conversation with them.
Yeah. I do have a thought here that I'd love to get your guys' take on this. Does anybody even report security vulnerabilities to Security @ anymore? Like in the world of bug bounty, it's because I remember Security @ back in the day when bug bounty didn't exist yet. And so people were using it to report things to Cisco, for example, or even the web hosting company Exodus that I worked for. People would report security issues. Somebody's DDoSing me from your IP address range would come to Security @ But it sounds like you guys, just by looks in your faces, that nobody's using Security @ anymore.
It does happen on occasion, I think, still. And I'd just say a couple of years ago, I think as of a couple of years ago, that was true.
Let's go back to Dast.
Oh God!
No, wait. This is good. On the last place that I was, that I had visibility on the bug bounty, we would commonly get emails directed at Security @ with somebody, usually in horrible English, saying that they had identified a missing header on an HTTP, whatever, right? And that they were interested in knowing if there is a bounty available. So they don't even have the patience to go to the places and see if there is a bounty available. They just blow everything that comes out of the desk into Security @ and bug bounty spray and pray.
Well, and realistically, I think we're using security.
The value
we're
of
using
desk.
Security @ as a placeholder, I think, for and Twitter and Facebook and et cetera. All the means by which and by the way, a lot of companies have support, community support forums, right? They don't offer regular support, so they have a community site. And so somebody's submitting a vulnerability report through a community site. Hey, I found a vulnerability. How do I report this to you responsibly? Or here's the exploit code publicly available now, posted online to lots of community support, or Reddit or whatever.
Before we run out of time, we're talking about how things are going to be reported and all that good stuff. But it says, what is it that has to be that can be reported, right? So there is 4 bullets: hardware of the product, fair enough. software that's pre-installed in the product. Fair enough. Software which must be installed on the product for everything to work. So something that a customer has to install into the product to get the whole functionality. Fair enough. And then the fourth one, software used for or in connection with any manufacturer's intended purpose of the product, unless the product is a smartphone or a tablet computer capable of connecting to cellular networks. So to me, that reads a bit like, hey, we can start reporting third-party libraries into to vendors, and they are expected to do something about it. Or am I reading too much into this?
I think that's a confusing wording. Software used for
or in connection with
any manufacturer's intended purpose, unless the product is a smartphone or tablet.
And what's special about smartphone or tablet computer capable of connecting to cellular networks?
That is an interesting call out.
You can talk about everything unless it's a smart, what's the name? Snapdragon? Don't talk to us about the modem in your device.
Yeah.
Why is that a thing?
Well, actually, the modem isn't SOAP. The modem is hardware. It's only the software that may use that modem that may be out of scope.
Oh, good point. Is firmware software?
Yes.
Yes.
Then
it is.
Then you can't talk about the firmware on the.
It's an interesting call out. Why specifically devices that connect to cellular networks?
I smell.
Well, it may be that those are covered under another regulation that we're not up to speed on.
They did not discuss this in the last VCount meeting. I smell conspiracy. That's something to do with 6G.
The Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Protecting Intellectual Property for Security Table smells a rat somewhere. So with that, we're out of time for this episode. It was fun to bounce through and think about these things. I think in general, we landed in support of most of them, maybe with a few questions or clarifications on some of the things they're doing. But hey, Matt's looking quizzical, like he didn't agree.
No. I'm just looking now that I understand the law better, there's more exceptions, and we could talk about that at length, but not now.
There's always exceptions to every, that's the devil's in the details, or the exceptions is what I think we'll find.
Wait for the book and the expose from the VCount on the conspiracy of why not smart.
For VCount, Izar, and just regular Matt. We're signing off on the security table. Thanks everybody for listening.